if you don't live there, you can't just walk into that courtyard and you can't just go up that rather delightful staircase. Elliot?
I think there's a balance to be struck here between open communities and achieving secure by design. The most important thing here is to make sure that the residents have an expectation of security in the development. Here that does necessitate that there is a gate on the front, but clearly as the scale of the development increases, so the way that we achieve secure by design will change, and we will have public spaces that will be open to the public in future developments.
We also drew analogies. London squares are gated and private, but they're still enjoyed by the passerby. And of course, the word, if you mention a gated community, it sounds like something terrible. Actually, what this is a private block of flats, 150 apartments, different users coming in, coming out, friends visiting. So it's a very, very lively place. But the danger of saying, oh, it's open to all, actually means no one owns it, no one takes responsibility, no one cares about it. So there is balance.
In any community, there is this question of the balance as to where the spaces are quite clearly public, where the line is drawn with the private, and then where the line is drawn with the space in between that becomes that semi-private space. And I think Adelaide is of a scale where we do have some semi-private space, but it probably isn't big enough in itself that we are moving into having public realm there, which is open to all.
Mm. In retrospect, what was the most difficult thing about this project? Was it a budgetary thing, or was it basically conceiving how you could make this combination of tenant mixes?
The tenant stack and the ever-changing kind of different models that we'll be creating was always technically a problem, alleviated actually by sort of service strategy drops that allowed us to move things around. But I think in the design process, we had to allow for different financial and appraisal and RSL and affordable and intermediate mixes all coming together. So it's kind of allowing in the design for that flexibility. The biggest pure architectural challenge, which I think Elliot alluded to earlier, was the idea of how do you make a simple, off the back of a lorry skin that we're putting around this building actually have depth, have quality. People talk about expression. We wanted to hide the fact that it was unitized facade, but yet at the same time, allow it to be read, and then so we used the wood, the larch that Elliot was very keen to use from the beginning, giving the building shadow and depth, and then adding the balconies. It was actually getting out of the stigma of, oh, that's a social housing block. It was actually saying that's a really good apartment block. That's what we're all working for the casual passerby to enjoy the building as much as those who saw the internal benefits of it.
Well, the critic Stephen Mullin, who wrote about this project in the Architectural Review, took the most prominent visual feature, the balconies, and he suggested that actually this was the first time that a contemporary architect had a real go at reinterpreting something which was latent in modernism generally, which was what you could do with a balcony as both expression and function, and dare one say it, ornament or decoration. Was there any precedent for this, actually? I mean, I can think of some sort of hints in your own earlier work, but was there a eureka moment when you realised that you could actually do this?
I think for us, there's always a reference to Lebetkin's early post-war housing and his reference to kilim rugs and carpets and making patterns. And we're quite keen that the building itself wasn't what everyone calls the barcode patterning of current fashion. It was relatively simple and calm. But actually the balcony moment is about saying it is a sculpture. It's one to be seen looking upwards, so it's about aligning so the colour is not only on the sides but it's on the soffits. And also the idea that actually if you move balconies around, you actually allow light. You're not getting that stack effect. Light is coming onto the balconies quite well because they're staggered in some way. And when you're in the rooms, you're not looking onto your balcony. The balcony is always placed slightly to the side, so you're looking out at the city, and that makes the balcony more of a room. So it really came from a whole detailed thought about how the inhabited wall could become magical to look at and be in. And the balance of that, fortunately, we think gave us this kind of architectural sculpture that we could enjoy.
Any questions for the architect? Comments, Stephen?
Can I start? I mean, interesting about this distribution of the affordable housing or the key worker housing with the private for sale. It's interesting you thought about the relationship between the canal and the park. I mean, is that something that happened by accident? I mean, you explained in some ways that it was the property side guys. Do you think actually, if you reversed them around, would it have had any more detrimental effect on value, or is that?
I think, from my perspective, if there is clearly a lot of benefit we would have gained from putting the open market for sale on the southerly side, with views of the park, with views of the city, and with views of Canary Wharf. Undoubtedly true. The other thing that drove us was sort of the long-term management implications here. Because after all, the success of this building is in part about how well it succeeds over the long term, and for that the management is critical. We recognise early on that the proportion of children in the social for rent was slightly higher, and therefore there was a lot of benefit in putting those homes closer to Haggerston Park so that they had the benefit of that rather than putting them further away from Haggerston Park.
Right. Can I just add on to that same kind of theme? Working with a lot of other developers as we do as we did in English Partnerships, now we do with the HCA, it's the kind of conflict area is when you're trying to inject into a high density scheme like this the 3-4 bedroom homes. And I know in other schemes we're doing, we've got like 5 bedroom homes. Yeah. How did you kind of look at that, kind of getting that kind of concept into this kind of building?
Well, I mean, we're on a busy street, and there we have some B1, we have some office space in the building, and part of the idea was we want to keep that street animated, and that's another way it doesn't feel like a block. So we have lots of front doors as well as our corridors, so they're actually front doors directly into flats, and those are family units.
And actually, I must say that having front doors on the street actually combats the idea of a gated community, yes. Because the gated community thing, you never get frontage like that. It's all internalised, whereas this scheme, this scheme obviously has an internal courtyard, but also has that exterior street presence.
Exactly. So those both serve to animate the street, and of course, actually, in the continent, families have lived above ground for a while, and therefore the large balconies allow a family to be at first floor. As Elliot said, a family in affordable housing can come off their 12 square metre balcony, pop down the staircase, and they're in the park. So in a sense, you're also having to encourage those who are living there to form a different view. They don't have to, they're not isolated from the world because they happen to be off the ground. And indeed, one of the concerns about the ground is animation, but also privacy. So if you're just jacked up a little bit, you get that privacy aspect as well. So I think there's always a trade-off, and different people, similar flats on different levels, different people take different views. They want to be nearer the ground or higher up. Some will enjoy the view, some will enjoy the easy proximity to the play area.
Can we just, sorry, I'm coming back. Can we just pick up this point about, which I'd like to not miss actually, because I think it's important, is the commercial space, actually. And I think that's a thing, Elliot will probably remember the square footage.
It's 600 square metres,
600 square metres. I'm sorry, I forgot it for the moment, but I think that's quite key there, because that's now affordable workspace, and what it is when organisations like the HCA does now, or English Partnerships got involved in the scheme, we look at the wider community benefits out of a scheme as well. And I think this is how we measure. We need to, one of the advantages of a public sector being involved in projects like this, which has to have a private sector understanding and a viability, but you can actually sometimes look at the overall community benefits. And that workspace, we were a bit concerned about it because it would have had an impact on the viability, but you're seeing a much wider, the much better outcome from it in a community delivery as well. So I think it's interesting that we mustn't forget this has quite an important bit of community benefit in the affordable workspace.
Yeah. Add one point on that. I think there was an interesting discussion very early on with Elliot and Hanif about structure. And we went for these blade columns on the basis that who knows, as life changes, that the flats might need to get bigger over time. They might be adapted. So that's a knock through. And the workspace is also designed, it could flow back to becoming housing, or the amount of workspace could increase. It's all about making a scheme that can be adapted over time rather than one that's static and for now and for this instant.
Thank you very much. We'll call a halt there.